Welcome back. You're watching Morning Express. We were just finishing off press review, and there's this story about Uhuru's 930 billion shilling pandemic war chest. And we've got opinions from Joy Brenda Midibo, who's a lawyer. And now I'd like to give it over to Gloria Roba, youth policy analyst, and Mark Bichachi, communication consultant, to tell us what they think about this particular strategy that the president is laying bare. This is according to a report that was released. That is the post-COVID-19 Economic Recovery Strategy 2020-2022 report. Gloria, over to you.
I agree with Joy. We need a proper audit because remember, we received funds. When the pandemic started, we received a lot of donations to our national. There was a kitty. There was a fund. We even had a management team or appointments. I can't remember. It was like 8 or 9 individuals who are managing that fund for the COVID fund. And we need to see an audit of where that money went to, and was it impactful, and what happened, in the places where it was not impactful. Do we have the lessons learned from it? But also in that story, when you look at the president's plan, you will read that they're talking about raising funds through new taxes, through debt, and through lifting exemption of certain taxes that they have there. So it's kind of like, it's a bit confusing actually for me, because we are trying to go through an economic recovery plan where we are trying to say that because we understand the effects of corona, we are actually going to try and exempt, certain players, whether it is the SME or certain industries, and, bring down the taxes to 14%. Actually, my co-panelist has always been telling me this tax thing, Gloria, if you had a tax break, whatever, there's always been a lot of conversation about how those tax exemptions are very important and they're helping in the economic recovery of this country. Right. But when you look at the plan, they're now saying they're going to lift those exemptions because they need to raise funds for, the economy, which means then now the taxpayers are going to be burdened with the high percentages of taxes. And then the other thing you see is that they're talking about collecting new taxes from high net worth individuals. In short, in layman's language, yani kwa ile lugha yenye mnaelewa, those rich people who have been practicing the economy and whatever, the government is coming for you. And that I agree with, because I think they should start with the COVID billionaires, because they have a lot of money that we can get taxes from. So in terms of what I think about it, I think it's a plan that is not really well thought of, because you want to push the economy by reviving it, but you don't have money, so you are going back to the same people who don't have money to tax them so you can get money, so you can push it back in the economy. It doesn't make sense. And by the way, tricks, according to the World Bank, June, I think it is the June report, we are now in debt in terms of our national debt is on around 7 trillion, 6.69 trillion, which, by the way, as much as the pandemic is ongoing, and as much as we have all this stress, financial strain in terms of running our counties and our national government, we still have to pay back that debt. And now the president is saying he's still going out to raise funds by getting in more debt. It doesn't make sense. Okay. It really doesn't make sense. Okay,
let's highlight some of the elements.
There's something that we need to understand.
Yeah. Joy?
Once the IMF comes in, the IMF will give you emergency funding. That's what they do. Yeah. But if you remember, like in the days of Moi, when the IMF came in, they'll give you conditionalities. That time it was the structural adjustment programs that were given. And I imagine that that is what is happening now, where they tell you, look, you guys, your tax bracket is not wide enough. There's many people who are making money and who are not being taxed. So you have to go after those people. Yeah. The IMF will also tell you, these tax breaks that you're giving, you're hemorrhaging too much money. Don't give the tax breaks. Claw that back. So there's some of these things that the government really has no control over. If they're going to get IMF support, they have to make these changes because their conditionalities prior to receiving the assistance. But over and above that, you saw yesterday the shilling hit a new low. We're at 110 shillings per dollar. That is really bad because we import oil, we import a lot of things that depend on that. So that is going to translate into more expensive kerosene for the people who are using kerosene in the estates. So this is not something that the government has the luxury of pussyfooting around. This is something that they need to hit hard. However, I agree with what Uhuru was saying the other day. One of the biggest problems is because in the Kenyan financial system, we have a lot of leakage and wastage. And that leakage and wastage starts in government. How we procure, how we pad our bills, and we allow people to get away with rape, murder, and manslaughter in terms of procurement procedures. We need to come to a place where we hold people to account. And I'm glad Gloria has brought up the issue of the COVID billionaires.
Yes.
Because COVID billionaires, I think, is a poster child for that systemic loss of funds in a way that we cannot explain. We don't have that anymore as a luxury.
Okay.
And if our leaders do not understand that, by the time we realize we will be in such a bad way, it will make the 1990s look like a joke.
Tricks. Let's just mark on in on this.
To add the 200,
yes, it's okay, but we cannot just be cannot be unfair like that. Let's have Mark in on this discussion as well. Mark, give your comment on this one.
Let's understand something, that we are not a country that is rich in oil, neither do we have diamonds by the truckload in our soils. And therefore, the largest source of revenue for government is the Kenyan people. Now, there are two ways to increase taxes. Number one is to broaden the tax bracket. And number two is to target high net worth individuals. And this is different from targeting corrupt individuals. And I'm not saying that the corrupt should not be targeted. I'm saying that there is a case to be shown that even as COVID was going on, you can see the number of buildings that were still being built across the city. And we must admit that as a country, we have such a huge wealth disparity between the richest and the poorest. And there needs to be a sort of balance. This is a question that not only Kenya struggles with, but also the United States. If you remember the campaign platform of Bernie Sanders, it was underscored by this kind of economic shifts that need to happen across the world.
Right.
Number three, we need to be very clear that yes, corruption is a hemorrhaging hole in our country, and therefore we must then expedite our efforts in asset recovery, expedite our efforts in the fight against corruption, and that will help in the hemorrhaging loss of money that happens in government. But that does not then also account and influence how you do a budget. And what we need to understand and appreciate is this, that number one, the stimulus package that the government rolled out at the beginning of the year by the World Bank, by the IMF, have actually worked. Instead of our economy shrinking by -3%, we've seen it growing by 2.5%, 3%, and that's what we're looking at. So the government so far has done a good job in as far as the numbers are concerned. Now, I know people will start saying, but some people lost jobs and things like that.
Right.
Yes, that happened, but by and large, we fared much better than what was expected. Therefore, we cannot then say that the people who did the first stimulus package were brilliant, and when they do the second one, even before they start rolling it out, we decide they don't know what they're doing. And government, by the way, is also the biggest spender in this economy. So when government is taking money to spend on the people and spend on its projects, it is expected to have a trickle-down effect. The thing that we actually need to look out for, and Joy Brenda Mdivo has underscored this very well, is that we need to look out for corruption and where that money is spent. So if it is meant to go into MGR and it's supposed to improve that, let it go exactly there. That's the conversation we should be having, instead of having emotional arguments about economics.
All right. Speaking of non-emotional arguments, let me lay bare some of the things that this package is going to go towards. We're told education will play a big role in the 2-year stimulus plan, with funds going to free primary and secondary education, hiring of more teachers, the purchase of desks, upgrading ICT and internet connectivity in all 5,000 universities, and boosting loans for higher education. Far from that, there's also the element of fledgling state corporations being merged. Civil servants will start paying pensions and most procurement will go digital in an effort to boost the financing of the stimulus package. I'd like us to pivot to the biggest story this week, and that had to do with the launch of the drive of the BBI signature collection. Some controversy tried to creep in, and that had to do with the lack of attendance of the deputy president. But at the same time, the president was very emphatic in trying to underscore the importance of constitutional change, the fact that it is a live document, and this is just the beginning of many amendments to come. I'd like to start with you, Joy. What stood out for you when that event happened earlier on this week?
The event was very well organized. It was very brief, to the point. The program ran very smoothly. There wasn't much of sideshows. And even the conversation that you had earlier with Gloria and Mark regarding the controversy surrounding Honorable Raila. I mean, he's over 70. Cut him some slack if he mixes up his D's and his B's.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that happens. It's not an indicator that he was ignorant of what was going on. It was just one of those things that when he was doing his off-the-cuff remarks, maybe he referred to the wrong end of the stick. But it's one of those things also that you saw where even how the program was run, there was an intentionality about being organized about it, brief, to the point, and being very succinct, for lack of a better word. And you remember Honorable Waweru being very categorical, promising Your Excellency no more than an hour. Because at the same time as the signature collection was happening, in the amphitheater, there was actually the budget conference that was going on with the CS and Parliament as well. So there are two very important meetings going on at the same time. And I think the president wanted to dispose of one so that he's able to follow the proceedings in the other, because that is what is giving rise to what we're discussing just the previous segment about the taxation, what is going to be removed, what's going to be added, what we can expect moving forward. And it painted a rather grim picture for those of us who managed to follow it for a little bit. But the event itself, like you said, the deputy president was not in attendance. I guess the ones who chose to invite or not invite him were like, you know what happened in Bomas, that's a story we don't want to repeat, because this was supposed to run like clockwork. And it did run like clockwork. So it's one of those things where I think for once we kind of got it right. It was very amusing that everybody was on with the Mashati theme.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't just the president, Honorable Raila, Junet, Wawero. I mean, everybody had the Mashati theme going, apart from the loyal leaders who had suit. But that is a story for another day.
Okay. Now, Gloria, your take. What stood out from that event for you?
It was organized. I'll give it to them. It was organized because they have funds, which we still don't know who's funding this initiative. So, I mean,
I sense a but.
No, really. If you have money, you can be organized.
Yes.
Punguza Mzigo struggled because they were not government funded. You understand what I mean?
Okay.
So for me, I think the bigger debate here, since we are now going on the bandwagon that they are now collecting signatures. Remember, we were told whether we like it or not, this thing will pass. I've come to the realization that I maybe have to shift in what I'm pushing for. And I was thinking, if this really is about the people, instead of pushing for that expanded executive of 5 people, and we're talking about win-win for everyone and devolution, I think we should have a bigger conversation about having more counties. Look at certain areas, and really this is where I want to pay focus on. Yes, there are certain things that have been, contested, that, the youth agenda is not being seen, and that I actually wish that instead of having a referendum where we just vote yes or no, I truly believe that if they would just put those amendments in terms of amendment 1 to 25, whatever it is they're changing, and we go in there and we decide to vote. If I like this thing about the Youth Commission and I just want to pass the Youth Commission, I write Youth Commission yes, na hizi zingine I say no. And then at the end of it, we have a threshold of, if you have collected, let's say, 8 million, 10 million, 15 million yeses on each amendment, then that is the one that passes. But having to bulk them all together and then say, just vote yes or no, there are some things I support that I think would actually push the 9 points agenda, and there are things that I feel strongly against that I do not want to. So it kind of leaves me in a place where I'm kind of like, so what do I vote here? And I think that was the consensus that the Tanga team was trying to push.
Okay.
But the bigger conversation, and I want to bring it forward, is instead of just appointing all these 360 MPs just to get to that gender parity, and they're not necessarily being given specific tasks, and you're not seeing like specific impactful things that they are doing, then I think let's take devolution to more counties. Let's move the counties from 47 counties to 94 counties, and look at places like Kitui, where you have Mwingi. Mwingi's side is bigger than even Kitui itself. That should be put as a county. When you look at Kakamega, the guys in Kakamega should be asking for Kakamega to be split into Vihiga-sized counties so that devolution is felt down to their place. The same with Busia County and Mombasa. But actually, if you're also talking about a win-win situation on national government to push for national cohesion, who says that this prime minister and official leader of official opposition, it cannot be scaled down to the county? I mean, if we are going to just go all the way and have a very heavy budget in terms of leaders, we might as well bring it down to the county. So let the governor also have a prime minister. Let the governor also have an official opposition leader to keep that county government in check. So Gloria, I think, it is, my point is, if we are deciding to push the economy of this country down the drain by that expanded executive and additional seats, let's push the economy down the drain, but let at least the people in the counties, in the grassroots, feel it in terms of devolution.
Okay, now you're bringing up issues within the referendum bill, and at this point the question would be about gathering, people appending their signature, and whether we'll go down to the referendum or not, and therefore it is up to them to decide whether they like these things or they don't. Now, Mark, when at this point in stage, don't you agree there's a case to be made for understanding what's in the document, making it available to everyone, so that when they get down to the point of a referendum, they're voting from a point of knowledge?
Well, yes, of course, there's a case to be made about informing the public. Now, of course, the question is how much information is information, and how much of it being distributed is enough. Because I know very well when the second BBI was launched, there was an insert in the newspaper. I know there's a download link on the BBI website. You can download the document. I know when you go to the BBI website today, before you approve, there's a short versions of the changes that have been made. The bill is there.
Yes, but Mark, pay attention to the literacy levels in this country. When you talk about websites and downloading and newspapers, there's a huge chunk of the Kenyan population that's being axed out.
I'm headed somewhere. I'm headed somewhere.
Okay.
Just allow me to
finish.
Okay. If you look at the statistics and the number of Kenyans who have access to the internet via phones, it is 16 million Kenyans. The adult population of this country is about 25 million. So let's not say that the internet does not get mashinani. In fact, if we are honest with ourselves, that's the way we should go. That's why the government is in fact investing in a lot of the internet technology. But moving forward, we must also understand that the document, the people who are signing it physically, the people who cannot access the internet, are also being given copies as they go to sign. So before you sign, it is expected that you have read. So the different places across the country that are going to have the places for signing this document, the document will also be made available. And therefore it is the expectation, and it is the logical expectation, that those people who sign to approve it will have read it, because it would have been made available. Because as you know, it is logistically impossible to distribute a copy to every single person who is alive in this country.
How is it logistically impossible?
So let's also have a realistic expectation of the BBI process.
Please, you can't say it is impossible, but you can't say it's impossible. If we can go down and reach every human being so that we can get a Huduma number, are you saying you can't reach that human being so that you can sensitize them on this document? You can't say that.
Yes, I am saying so, because Huduma number is a very different process, my dear,
it's actually a more complicated process than sensitizing the people.
Let's not be armchair analysts, but my point is
I don't know why.
That every person
Mark, let's have Joy tell us what she thinks about that. Joy, please come in. Joy, please, I'd like your comment as we conclude the conversation.
I don't know why we want to belabor this point. So let me make my bigger point. My bigger point is this. that the BBI is not the be-all and end-all of legislation, okay? If you want another constitutional referendum, the BBI process does not stop you from starting one by popular initiative, does not stop you from introducing a motion in parliament. So let's stop acting as though this is the only amendment possible and start and saying, oh, let me add mine. Come on. The processes, this is not the end of legislation in this country. Let us be pragmatic. If there's something missing in the BBI, you can do it yourself, or you can go to your parliamentarian and introduce it in parliament. Let's open our minds. Let's not act as though once we vote in for BBI, there is never going to be another referendum.
Okay, but Joy, please come in on this conversation, because I'd like you to get your comment in, because we are running out of time.
I think when it comes to this signature collection, it is an important part of the signature collection for people to understand what it is that they're signing up against. And a criticism I have of the process is that the bill was not made available before the signature collection started happening. But that's where we are right now.
Yes.
The time that we have between now and whenever the referendum comes is several months. So in all honesty, we have until maybe May of next year for people to have an opportunity to read through this. And there's something that Kenyans need to understand. It is part of your constitutional right. Even if you sign the signature now to pass the referendum, if by the time it comes to the referendum, you get to have read the bill and you don't agree with it, you can still vote it no.
Yes.
And so it's one of that opportunity where Kenyans need to understand that the signature collection is not necessarily an endorsement of the entire bill as it is.
Indeed.
Like we've seen with Musalia.
Excellently put, Joy. Thank you so much. We have run out of time, unfortunately. We have run out of time. I'm sorry. We can't. We really can't go on. We cannot go on. Brian Aseli is on my neck right here.
That's a scenario.
Yes.
But on the other hand, I remember when we were doing the 2010.
We have run out of time, unfortunately. We're taking a break. When we come back, Brian Aseli shall bring us entertainment, news, and celebrity chat.
And we're able to go with the copies around the country.
Yeah, we're taking a break. I'm sorry to my guests. We have run out of time, but thank you so much for bringing perspective and context to the discussions that we are having. Joy Brenda is an advocate. Gloria Roba is a youth policy analyst, and Mark Bichachi is a communication consultant and political analyst.